Don't do it because I said so. Don't do it because I said so. Because I said so. What? Because I said so, okay? Why? What does that mean? Why? No, stop asking. I said don't do it. I said don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'll freak out. Welcome to the Pool Pin Podcast, everybody. We're going to talk about a culture of don't that just says no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not going to explain why you shouldn't. I'm not even going to suggest anything positive. I'm just going to say don't do it. No. But while we're at it, can you cue that intro for me? Now.
A likely winner in this event is the 25-year-old American Donald George Bragg, nicknamed the Flying Tarzan. Success in the pole vault depends largely on the strength of the arms, and Bragg's arms are amazingly powerful.
There's a lot I can say about this, and I'm going to try not to talk too much because I can talk, but let's light it up for the Lord, people. Come on. Yay, baby. All right, well, culture of don't. Culture of don't. What do I mean? Well, I know from experience that a lot of people grow up in very conservative cultures. There's a lot of things that you could probably say specifically to describe, conservative, strict, sheltered, I don't know. Whatever adjective you want to use to describe a culture that really focuses, I guess you could say, on behavior modification. A culture that's very focused on don't do these things. Now, as a disclaimer, I can run it by the end of the screen. This is no indictment on anyone that raised me. No family, no community, no church. I'm not trying to say anything specific about anybody. Blah 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 blah. Words like whatever those commercials are. Words like blah, 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 blah. Terms and conditions apply. This is no reflection on anything other than just my experience with a myriad of things. Okay, it's a whole host of things. But a culture of do not do it. Why? Because I said so. That is a tricky sentiment for a lot of different reasons. I do find as a Christian that cultures can fall into that idea of because God says so. Because the Bible says so. And that's really hard to argue against. If you're a Christian, right, and you really believe in those things, it's really hard to just if someone's this says this, do it. You're like, okay, well, I don't know what what am I supposed to say now? And I will say that that's a very dangerous thing when, I understand that sometimes you can read a scripture and say, well, here's what it says, right? Sure, sometimes it is that objective. I get that. But it also is very tricky when there's some things that aren't maybe as, clear cut in nature. And yet someone assumes the authority to say, this is what God said, but it's I wonder sometimes, did God say that or are you saying that? Because a little thing is involved whenever we talk about a scripture or anything like that, and that is the interpretation of it. The interpretation of it is coming from a person, right? I'm not saying the word the word itself. I'm saying that when a person's interpreting it and someone can claim authority over something that they might not fully understand, and you got to be careful of that. That's a really tricky game to play, but maybe a conversation for another time. A culture of don't. A hyper-conservative, just you don't, Well, this is a tough one today. Well, not really, I don't give a shit. But anyway, today we're going to invite our special guest. I got to find a special guest for today. Here's my special guest for today. Give me a second, please. This is the llama. Special guest for today is the llama. Clap it up for the llama. Was it an extreme reflection on the llama's face? I'm not really sure. I might check the camera. Give me 1 second. I was wrong. A strict culture of don't. And I think when I say a very conservative, very strict culture, I mean it's the propensity toward, excusez-moi, please. It's the propensity for a culture to focus on the things that we shouldn't do. Or the things that just don't do that. But not really explaining the why, right? Or explaining maybe an alternative that could be better. I think these cultures can also create fear-based cultures. A culture that's so obsessed with the things that you shouldn't do that it never really explains fully the things that we should do, or the things that are good, or the things that are healthy, or whatever it might be. It also lacks nuance. It's like there's a lot more behind no than just no. So diving in a little more of the nuance and wrestling with that versus making it just like, this is how it is. I think that's kind of dangerous. I do, personally. I think that's very dangerous. And I honestly have seen the result of that in a lot of people that I know as well. I've seen the result of a restrictive or hyper-restrictive or over-restrictive, whatever, culture that only focuses on the things that we shouldn't do. And it doesn't often produce the healthiest people naturally. It doesn't often produce the healthiest people, in my opinion. If someone becomes healthy from that culture, like they found a way to be healthy in spite of it, or they learned the good things from it, but like it inherently, I don't think, teaches people like the right things to become a well-balanced and grounded, healthy person. Now, I want to say this. There's so much I could say, and I could revisit this another time. But hyper-restrictive environments, it can create three kinds of people, I think, but primarily two. One, someone who submits. Someone who just gives in, does what they're told, follows the rules, doesn't question anything, and then they grow up and then they perpetuate the same type of behavior, the same ideals, the same thoughts. They don't challenge. Which for those cultures, you're like, yay, we win, yay. And it's like, well, now they're living their whole life afraid. I don't think fear is a very good thing. Another person it produces is a rebel. And I don't know, like everybody wants to be a rebel. Oh, I'm such a rebel. I'm so crazy. It's like, shut up, man. I mean, someone that pushes against what they were taught. Okay, so I'll say it produces someone who pushes against what they're taught. Someone who rebels against that culture. So instead of, and I kind of want to talk about this a little more, when an overly repressive culture forces those ideals on someone, it can create the very thing it was seeking to destroy, or the very thing that it was seeking to avoid. When people grow up in an environment where they're just told the things they shouldn't do, a very restrictive culture, that culture can very often end up creating the very kind of person it was trying to avoid. Woo! You hear that? A lot I could say about a culture of don't, conservative culture, whatever it might be, but I do want to talk about that one, okay? It's a strange dichotomy, right? You want someone to live a certain way, and you have a certain ideology and way of thinking and believing, whatever it is, and so you want to impart that to your kids or to a community or whatever capacity that idea, that ideology, theology, whatever it is being imparted. So you want them to listen. You want them to do certain things. But the crazy thing is this. I imagine a kid, right? Imagine him with a little kid when you tell him what to do. Hey, don't do that. What's the first thing he does? He tries to do it. You tell him again, no. And he tries to do it again. You tell him, no. Like, by nature, people are like, they want to do what they want to do, right? And it's like, well, you know, it's like the stove, you know, like it's burn their hand. So, well, let them do it. They'll burn their hand and see that, you know. It's like, all right, relax, okay. Not everything in life is a stove, all right? That's not how life works. But by nature, kids, and some kids are more submissive than others, but by nature, there is a rebellious nature in kids. And it's like, well, you tell me no, and now I want to do it more, you know. Keep telling me no, and, you know, right? That's how we are as people a lot. It's like, you tell me no, now I'm more curious. You tell me no, and you don't give an explanation, I'm very curious. Keep telling me no, and after a while, I'm going to want to do it. I'm going to want to do it. I'm going to want to explore it. I'm going to find out. I think that's one thing that's difficult about very conservative cultures is that they didn't really account for the fact that people were going to grow up in the culture that we did today with whatever the climate is of the day, you know, where not everybody holds those very traditional values. I think that very restrictive cultures, they don't account for the fact that, like, hey, years from now, if these people that grew up in this culture, if they go somewhere else, if they whatever it might be, if they do something, the rest of the world isn't necessarily going to be this restrictive. but it doesn't account for that, okay? That's a problem. Because in the lack of accounting for that, it doesn't prepare people when they come in contact with it. So you're told your whole life, don't do this thing. When you come in contact with it, it's like you don't know what to do other than short circuit, right? The proverbial homeschooler. Homeschoolers get a bad rap. I went to public school myself, but I know my brother homeschools, but they do it right. They do it really well. And I actually like it because I think you can get a better education personally through it. I think the public school system, a lot is wasted. I'll say that. And that's purely, has nothing to do with morals because I am glad. It's just purely like, I think just so much waste educationally and potential for people. Anyway, educational system is broken. We get that. But the proverbial homeschooler, right? It's like they're in that culture. They come into contact with other things. And it's like, wow. Let's remove homeschooler out of it. My nieces and nephews are the bomb. Shut your mouth. I don't care if they are amazing, okay? Shut up. Shout out Lila, Levi, Madison, Maddie, and Max. Don't you even come at me. I will fuck you up. I know for myself, when I got out of a very conservative culture, when I came in contact with certain things that was always like, no. It's a bit to process when you see other people doing those things. Now, let's get specific. What am I talking about here? Things like drinking, things like cursing, things like sex, things like, things like that. It could be as simple as somebody that come in contact with people that you think like, oh, we have the same beliefs, and you see them drink, and you're like, oh, I thought they didn't. What? Oh, wait, they drink? How can they be a Christian? And there's a lack of ability to like parse things out. There's a lack of wrestling with nuance, and it short circuits some people's minds when they come in contact with all the things they were told no about. And that's what I'm saying, that this very conservative, restrictive ideology, it didn't know or account for the fact like what the cultural climate would be today, over a decade later or however much time later. I mean, God, like decades later. The 90s is very different than the 2020s. Is that what you're saying? 2020s? They're not the same. It creates a lot of difficult dynamics because when you have a very traditional mindset, if you like leave and go out and experience life in the world and everything, like it's a different kind of world. And then you come in contact with a lot of people that aren't living a traditional kind of mindset. And so it's like, what do you do? Well, it's like, well, either like, what am I going to like conform and go find all the very traditional people? Or we're going to try and find, make friends with new people. You become like this very like push and pull and like, how do I like navigate this? To bring the point back to what I was saying, I know for a lot of people, like we're curious, we want to belong, we want to get to know things. So people end up exploring and trying things and doing things because the rest of society is doing those things. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or this or that, up, down, left, right. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that nature inside of a kid is inside of us. You say no, and we want to know more about it. And you've been restricted your whole life. At some point, you are curious. You're curious. You also want to belong. When everybody else is doing it, it becomes lonely. This is a huge one that people don't account for. Like, it's like, well, we're not like everybody else, but it's like, yeah, but when you're out on your own and you're trying to figure out your life, you sit there and you realize, like, okay, well, I'm not in Kansas anymore, right? This area is different, or this life is different, whatever it is. These people are different, You want to belong. And it gets exhausting or lonely, or isolating, I should say, when your life is so dramatically different, or even different like in these ways that seem small but actually change a lot. It becomes isolating being the person that's just like always like, I don't do it, But how do you navigate that? It's not like the dare, just say no. Just say no. Drug program, elementary school, man. We had some cop came in, gigantic gut, man, big beer belly, and he's like, just say no. Okay, yeah, sure, thanks. Why don't you say no to the pie? Here's some pie. This is actually cheesecake pie. It's pretty good. Anyway, I was eating it. Restrictive cultures. I do have to thank one of our sponsors for the video today. Our sponsor today is 3M Strips. Command 3M Strips. Guys, let me tell you something. This is coming from the heart. These are weighted for, there are whatever, for 15 pounds. Okay? 15 pounds. So if you want to know, those shelves back there, I got a big painting. I got a big mirror. My whole house is pretty much held up with these bad boys. Let me show you something. I'm gonna actually get excited now. I'm actually excited about this sponsor. Take these bad boys, okay? For those of you who can't see because you're listening, just listen to the clicks. So you separate them like this. You separate like this, like this. Put them together, okay? You put them together. Yes. Now, if you have enough surface area, you slap that bad boy on, peel it off on that side, stick it on, put it on the wall. Sorry, I'm talking away from the mic. Stick it on, put it away from the wall. Bada bing, bada boom. That thing ain't going nowhere. These are up to 20 pounds. I'm sorry. 20 pounds. Pretty sure, yeah, 20 pounds. It's an 17, 18 pound mirror. That's a big ass mirror over there, and that thing is being held up by command strips. These puppies are amazing. I literally use them for everything in my house. Actually, these are really cool. They're great. They're fantastic. They hold everything. They hold the world up. Don't use them on the ceiling though. They won't work for the ceiling, but that's okay. We don't blame them for that. They hold up everything else in my life. They're fantastic. Now, command strips. A little copy I got to read here. Excuse me. They really are awesome. They do. You can hang anything, and then I can just peel them off because I can't really hammer in my walls. I can't really drill in my walls. Okay, this house is like really old, 1895. So like there's some kind of shit behind the walls. I can't So anyway, I can just take things off the wall and put them off. Ain't no damage. Now let me read the command 3 on the copy they gave me. They said damage-free hanging. Suspension sans domages. Domages. There's a caution. Failure to follow instructions may result in damage or injury. Do not hang valuable items or objects greater than 2 inches thick. Do not hang over beds or on wallpaper. Some instructions, but we're just going to ignore all those. But anyway, 3M command strips. Command 3M, command strips. Whatever, they're sponsor. Thank you very much, command strips. Back to the show. I have found for myself that the longer that I've lived, the longer that you just experience more people and more life and everything. When it feels like you're just instilled with the idea of don't, after a while, it wears you down. It wears you down. And you're like, well, I'm tired of not doing my, sorry, it's like, well, I'm tired of just not doing anything. I'm tired of feeling like the outsider, Tired of it. And it's funny because I know for myself, for a very long time, people don't understand how long those values, man, they stay in you. They're ingrained in you, It's funny because I talk about what that culture produces. It can produce people that are very submissive, people who rebel. The third one is healthy people. But it's not because of how they were raised. It's because those people wrestled with the ambiguity that they were taught, got through it. Like my brother's a great example of this. My buddy Kyle is a great example of this. Like guys that really were able to wrestle through the good, the bad, the ugly, all the kind of stuff, and then come out the other side a healthy person without having had to rebel and wreck their lives. And also not be submissive, but be wise, I respect the hell out of them, man. Big time. I know for me, I got out of it and found a reasonably healthy life to live, able to make friends, community, able to live, all this kind of stuff, right? But under the right circumstances is when I fell off the rails. And it was the shame I felt from how do I say this? There's an extreme fear around saying yes to the things you're taught to say no to, right? It's a fear. There's also and it's a deep-seated fear. One that's I didn't just do something bad, but I fucked up really bad. Man, it's tough. I'll say this. I take responsibility for everything I've ever said or done. That's on me. That's on me. And ultimately, how I interpret something, I'm my own person. And at this point in my life, I'm a grown-ass man. So any of my actions, thoughts, ideas, whatever it is. I've had so much time to shape myself, right? I will say that at a certain point in my life, I'd never even dated anybody in my 20s because I swore it off. I was like, not like out of a religious way, but like once I found film at 24. I just was like, I don't want to. I became so obsessed with it and was like trying to build a career, and I felt like it was late for me. So like after how many years, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. For me, it was like give my 20s over to God. And I'm gonna focus just on pursuing film, man. So it was less of like super pop. Like I just was like I really wanted to get it more ahead in film, and I loved it, right? And I wanted to like I just focused on that instead. So my 20s, I was never in a serious relationship. Now I'd kind of like some girl here, kind of make out, kind of, but I'd never really pursued any kind of relationship. And it's funny because a lot of things that I probably shouldn't necessarily go into detail about. But what I can say is this is. My mental health is a whole thing, yada, yada, but this is dealing more so with just circumstances in life. My mental health is always an underlying factor in things. But I remember the first time I slept with someone. Sounds crazy, I know. I was in my 30s. That's how long it took. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that I slept with somebody. As wild as I know, it sounds wild. And under the circumstances, it was not a positive experience at all. And it was actually met with, the night itself was very odd in some ways. I remember the next day, there was an expression from the other person of a fear of whether or not they might be pregnant. Knowing what I know now, I look back and I'm like, no. I'm like, no, you're fine, But when you are not used to something, you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of details that I won't get into, but that first experience was a violation for me of like how I lived, what I believed, right, about sex and things. And I hated myself. Like, I literally, I would write, I would journal, right? That like, I really like, and that's going to sound weird, I know, but I was like, I journaled that like, I think I feel like I was cursed. I felt like I cursed my life. I feel like I ruined my life from sleeping with somebody. I was like, I ruined my life. And it wasn't just as simple as that. It was like sleeping together and then pregnancy scare. And then there's a whole little mini season that ended a bit traumatically for me. It took a long time to heal. But what's really hard is that, I own my own life, my own actions. But what's crazy is that, I just lick the mic. A big reason emotionally and mentally that I responded the way that I did was because of this fear and shame. And it was so intense. Like the guilt and the shame and the hatred of myself. Like I literally like thought I ruined my life. I really was like, I ruined my life. I ruined my life. Here's what's crazy. I'm being very candid right now. This person I really feel like I loved, and that's what drew me in to making some of the decisions I made. And in the wake of that, I felt so bad after that ended, that little period of ours. After that ended, I had my first drink a little bit. Like I started drinking in my 30s too. I didn't drink my whole life, which is crazy, I know. It's complicated. After having made some of the decisions I made, I felt like I ruined my life, and I felt like I was cursed by God, and I felt like I just every awful thing you could imagine. Yes, which then affected my mental health in a really negative capacity. Which then, when when I hang out with friends, we would go downtown, and I was just like, it was hard to say no because I'm like anything to get away from how awful I feel about myself, how horrible, how ugly and disgusting I am. And then I would drink, and drinking would shut my brain off, right? So I got into drinking. And it's not like I would wake up in a parking garage, but I was drinking a lot, like heavily, because it would shut my brain off. And then as time went on, I really did my best to try and get healthy at first, but then without meaning to, I ended up getting on dating apps, and the first date got physical. My first experience with my first dating app was physical, and then the second was sexual, and then that led to eventually sleeping around. So you go from somebody who doesn't do anything to now I'm like pretty much doing everything. And I don't have cool stories to share of saying like, wow, man, I was like crazy. I jumped off this bridge and then I did, this, I did blow and I woke up in some, whatever, but relative to my story, things got out of control. Bad, man. But I realized like later on, I could look back at my story, got a little slow to press there. Sorry. But later on, I could look back at my story, right, and realize that my heart, the first experience I had with sex was so traumatizing for me that I think sleeping around became a way to minimize the importance of that first encounter I had. And I don't say that lightly. And I think we do things and we don't even know why we're doing them, And in the moment, you think, I've already like ruined everything. So what does this matter? It doesn't. And it's not purely the fault of a culture. I'm not trying to say that. And I didn't mean to get this deep or whatever about my own story. But the reality is that a lot of what was, I know, just in me made me do the very things that I was like told not to do. It's like the shame surrounding those behaviors was so intense that once I actually crossed that line, I had no way out. Is like I thought it was over. I thought I ruined my life. And so then it's like, well, then who gives a fuck? Like, honestly, like, who gives a fuck at this point? And you just burn your life to the ground, It's like, whatever, And again, I'm not. I can't sit here like I'm some like Hell's Angel, tatted up, crazy, like blah, like. No, I'm not gonna act like I'm something I'm not. But I will say, like, definitely lived recklessly in some ways and did a lot of dumb things. And to be honest, it just started burying how much I hated myself. Just like, well, I've already ruined everything, so it can't get any worse than this. I'm not trying to blame anything, but that's why I said at the beginning that that kind of way of that culture, what it teaches, what it pushes, it can create the very thing it's trying to avoid, destroy, get rid of. It created it in me. I've come back down to reality, thankfully. I'm not in that place anymore, Drinking, habits, behaviors. Like, I'm in a much healthier place today. I'm very thankful for that. But it took a lot of healing, man. I'm not gonna explain another time, but it took a lot of healing, and it took a lot of life and a lot of relationships and a lot of mental health and all kind of stuff. Took me a long time to rebel, but it came out eventually. There's no blame. It's just I know how I interpret things myself, and that's where I ended up. So didn't really mean to get in all that specifically to that degree, but I don't know. I just thought about it. That's my story, man. And hey, those experiences have made me who I am. And it is what it is. It is what it is. I am who I am, and I'm not gonna what am I gonna do? I am who I am. It just makes me think, about if I have kids someday. It makes me think about people that I talk to. Makes me think about my family. It's just it's tough because I can relate to so many more people now, and I understand life so much more now. And there's so many things that I get, which I could say that's a conversation for another time. But it is very hard to go through that and feel a measure of here's how we should live, and the dogma of my faith, believing in Christ, none of that ever changed. It was just the behavior. Probably end it here, but man, that season wrecked me, man, and it was a large result of what I believed about myself. And this is the side people don't talk about as much. How do you account for the fact that people are going to make their own decisions and do their own things? What do you do then? What do you do when someone's not perfect? What do you do then? What do you do if someone does the, unpardonable thing? By God's grace, I'm on the other side of a lot, man. But that way of thinking is just, it's tricky, man. It's tricky. I got a bit heavy about all this, and I didn't mean to, but I'll end with this, I guess, since more I could say in another video, but I'll end with this. Imagine a kid has a ball. He likes playing with a ball, right? But you don't want him to play with the ball. If you just go and take the ball from him, what's he going to do? He's going to cry or get mad, or right? Fill in the blank. He's not going to be happy or just acquiesce, right? He's going to be upset. If restrictive culture can do that and just say, "Give me that, give me that thing you have. I'm gonna take that away from you." Even for someone growing up, your sexuality, I'm taking that away from you. No. Oh God, I have to all the time, because if you're a Christian and you don't have sex, you're gonna have a great marriage. Yeah, okay. I know a lot of shitty Christian marriages that waited for marriage. Marriage is actually a lot more than sex. Okay. But that kid, what would happen if you gave him something better than the ball? Not even take the ball and explain to him why he shouldn't have it. What if he said, "Here, I got something better"? Great. It's not about manipulating him, but it's show him a better life. Show him something better. Don't just take the ball away and be surprised when he cries and pitches a fit. It's give him something better. That's all I got, man. Yeah, I didn't mean to get off on all this. So, wow. There's another side to these things, man, and you can go through you can be suppressed and be healthy. You can rebel and become healthy again, or you can be healthy. It's possible to become healthy in any scenario. You just got to be careful when you base your entire ideology, what feels like for people, on don't. It's tricky. But hey, here we are today by the grace of God, man. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. That got heavy. God's good, man. By the grace of God, God's good. Found my way out. I don't know what to say. Make of this what you will.